Good evening.
Good evening.
I am doing this because I don't want this discussion to fail. And I wish people would just come up and ask questions.
Absolutely.
I want to say, first of all, Ronnie, you actually invoked the spirit of Oscar Allen. And I wish Oscar was here just now to address this. You actually touched on the topics that, or the points that I know Oscar would have raised. In that vein, I'm going to just ask a series of questions. Some of them are rhetorical, others for you to address. And I asked this question on Sunday, and I did not get an answer, a proper one anyway. How does one deal with the issues that you're dealing with here now and not be political? I don't understand it, and I need to find out now, based on the fact that we are a politically divided nation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. How does one disrupt the systems, the criminal one especially, without a pace? We must get back pace. You saw what happened to that young lady who went to court and admitted to cybercrime, and it turned out, the claim is, a policeman encouraged her to admit or to plead guilty, and she did not have a lawyer. Had we had pace, that might not have happened, and we could get that with other things. How does one tell me that a PSU, and I have to commend the PSU actually, I must commend you, because you've given us a platform to deal with things that are not very comfortable. And I'm going to knock you a little bit too. How can a PSU be so enlightened and not address the issue we had recently, the Yugi Camilo debacle? I didn't hear you. I did not hear you. How can you allow a dignified silence in a situation like this? How can you not look at the claim that there is a sex ring right here in Kingstown, not far from here, and not look at the issue of human trafficking, for which St. Vincent and the Grenadines top the list many times? How can we as a society claim that violence against women, especially sexual violence, is not unique to St. Vincent, and you deny that St. Vincent and the Grenadines are unique, or we are unique to have in a cabinet 2 individuals in it who are using their influence of power and money to avoid allegations of the kind that we're dealing with here now. How can we, as a nation and a trade union, allow an election to happen and have those 2 people there without insisting that they resign? How can we? How can we say that we have the National Council of Women, the PSU, the Human Rights Association, and you do not know whether there is sex trade in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Let me just give you one example and I'll leave. About 3 years ago, a young man, he might be listening to me too. I don't know him, I've never met him, but on Facebook, out of the blues, and I do get these experiences a lot of time, people opening up themselves to me, telling me about their lives. This particular young man told me that he had to revert to sex with older men to go to school. The young man was crying in cyberspace to me about 3 years ago. He managed to use the money to elevate himself, and now he's working successfully. And he now carries that burden. He's watching these men. And we're here talking about these things and avoiding things to disrupt. I want us to start disrupting by making sure that those 2 people in the cabinet resign now. If you're telling me the time is enough, or time is now, and enough is enough, we cannot have a government that cannot speak to the issue of national security while they are in touch with it. Now, another question, but I want to ask a favor of you. When this thing happened with Yugi Farrell, we saw what happened. A particular family took to the airwaves, and they literally manipulated the press, written and otherwise, in their favor. The front line, through me, wrote to the Attorney General asking him to conduct an investigation into the way that family and other people, members of that family, dealt with that Yugi affair. In some cases, one of them caused fear and alarm among us when they said that it is right for police to go behind or back out of the court and tell the magistrate what to do and then come in and do this. How do we do this? How do we deal with these? We must address these questions head on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, response. Sorry about that. We'll catch up with you just now. Yes?
There was a question posed within a series of questions that you just asked. I commend the PSU as well for hosting such a discussion. I live in Barbados. I cannot, and I am not going to address certain issues that you just raised, because I believe that those who live here would be most better equipped to answer that question. But I will say, there's nothing happening in St. Vincent and Grenadines that is not happening anywhere else in the Caribbean and in the world. There is corruption in politics and political influence everywhere in the world. It is not only in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. How it will be stamped out is by knowledge. We as a society and we as a people have to read more about our rights. We have to become more inclined with our rights. We cannot wait on Parliament and political influences and members of Parliament and the police force to educate us only when something happens. So, to stamp out certain things that are happening in society, we have to be knowledgeable ourselves. We fall short of our own representation and have to ask for further representation where we are not aware of our rights. And I hope that that answers the entire question that you just posed, because unless you know your rights, you cannot ask for assistance to help you with a problem. So there's nothing happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that is not happening anywhere else in the world. And that's it for me.
All right. Luzette, what I'll try to do in a very short way is address the issue, the question of pace, although I feel most of the latter questions were to the Public Service Union, to which I cannot address. I'm not sure if the President, who's sitting right behind there, or Javelle can answer those that were specifically directed at the PSU. But with respect to PACE, PACE is an acronym for Police and Criminal Criminal Evidence. It's an act that St. Vincent and the Grenadines had, but it was abolished in sometime early 2000, in the early 2000. 2001, 2001,
2001.
Okay. And that particular act contained rights and freedoms and balance for people who were accused and come into contact with the police, and as well, what were the rights for police in terms of, or the procedure in terms of how the police would handle people who were accused of criminal offenses. You said that perhaps if we had PACE, still had PACE, that what happened at the magistrate court would not have happened with respect to the comments that, well, not the comment, that what actually happened when the magistrate would have sent Yugi to the mental asylum without more or evidence adduced in court. But there is also a set of procedures under what is called the judge's rules, which is like a shortened version of PACE. And I think we also established as well that sometimes we also have strong legislation or have legislation in place, and what is missing is enforcement. What happened there is something rather basic that I don't think that you need PACE to have, to avoid what happened in the magistrate court. The other question I tried to address, and I do now know that you were the one who called in on the radio program on Sunday when you asked the same question, because I believe, was it you who raised the issue? No, it wasn't you. But I remember someone quoted the Jamaican Prime Minister of saying that we must not politicize the issue of violence against women and violence in general. But maybe, I mean, you're not at the microphone, because I had responded to that question. Obviously, you said there that you weren't satisfied, so I'm not sure if if I gave a response, if you're going to be satisfied again. Because maybe in a short, you can explain to me what is your definition then, and what you feel by saying to make it political. Because my response would have been that, she says, don't politicize it. Right, but do you mean in terms of partisan politics? Applying, because the explanation the lady gave was, don't avoid me a service because I may support the Unity Labour Party, and don't avoid a service because of a color, or so whether you ULP or NDP, is in that context you're talking?
Yes. The fact is, I don't know how we do it, and I did say to you, in a situation where we're so politically divided, how do you deal with it and not have somebody say, okay, let me give an example and that might help you. You remember when Kate came out, how she was treated on a particular radio station? If it were on the other side, it might have happened on the other side too. So that's why I'm saying, how do we avoid that kind of discussion when we're dealing with something like this? And the last question is, I need some clarification here. This session that we're dealing with today, is it to deal with the violence against women in St. Vincent, or throughout the Caribbean or the region? What is it? I need some clarification on that.
Well, I don't think I can answer for Javelle, but my impression would have been St. Vincent, yes, but also the young lady from Barbados represents a perspective from Barbados.
The point I'm trying to make here, I always hear it. This happens all over the world, so why can't it happen here? You understand what I'm saying? And there has to be a point. I mean, when you're in your home and you're talking to your children, you don't necessarily say to them, look, the neighbor do it too, so you can do it. No, let's deal with us and then we can go out. We have to deal with what is here. We are, I'm not saying we're unique, but we have problems that we have to face.
Sister Luzette, I don't want you to leave here thinking that we're not dealing with the issue at hand locally. That is why we're having a conversation, as a matter of fact, because we lack these sort of discussions right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that is what gave birth to the whole idea of having this panel discussion at this time.
Javelle, when we deal, let's forget about the emotive
So I don't want you to think, well, it's just on a regional movement.
Let me try and tell you why I'm saying this.
Okay.
when we're dealing with the murders, you remember some time ago we had every other night we had a murder. You remember that? People would say, but it happened in America, so what's the big deal? And I'm saying we need to stop talking about that. I'm not saying that it's not happening elsewhere, but give us space. I thought I was invited here by the PSU to address, yes, address globally, but at the same time, the issues that are happening here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's what I thought.
Ronnie is saying something?
Could I just before,
hold a second,
I just want to respond to, you take the question?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Sorry, Brother Kenrick. Luzette, thank you for your questions. And that is precisely what my little reflection was about. Our hands are not clean because if you have the persons who we consider to be leaders in our communities, religious, the clergy, politicians, teachers, and we ain't reached yet, and a lot of that happening in our schools by teachers exploiting our students, and we hush-hush in some corner, right? The point about it is this, that if you have a situation in which a weakened civil society exists, then the only institution, well, not even institution, organization that mobilizes people in any considerable and significant way is the political party, then you must expect a situation that we have in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a weakened civil society, including churches, and a trade union, I can't diss my guest, but I have to, a trade union movement in St. Vincent that is reclining or retreating. I mean, PSU is doing some good work and teachers union, but overall, what is the picture? So I say that to say that if political parties dominate, what do we expect in this country? So I am saying, whether you're a bishop or a playboy politician, we will continue to have the kinds of violations that we have if we, the people, don't rise up, step up, and do something about it. How is it that morality does not have well, let me put it another way. Morality appears not to be a consideration in our choice of our leaders, and I go across the board. Not just our politicians, but our church leaders. So I'm saying to you that explains in part where we are. And that's why I'm saying that our hands are not clean as individuals and as a society, and the institutions that we are a part of. I don't know, honestly, Luzette, how we are going to get out of this dangerous place that we are, unless and until we, the people, say that, no, this is not acceptable in a growing democracy, in a country that is so resource-starved, that 50% or thereabout, or just under that, is isolated every 5 years, or 17 years when we celebrate ULP's victory next month. 17 years on what, March 28? 28, it will be 17 years, a record that will equal NDP's. Could you imagine that? I just leave it at that.